I found a hidden map inside my wife's favorite childhood storybook. It sounds like the start of some adventure novel, right? Like a treasure hunt, a secret inheritance, something out of a movie. But this wasn't a movie, and the treasure it led me to wasn't gold or jewels. It was something far more devastating, something that still got me waking up in a cold sweat years later. Before we dive too deep into all that, though, if you're finding yourself pulled into this story, if you're feeling that gnawing curiosity, do us both a favor and hit that subscribe button. And while you're at it, throw a like on this if you're connecting with the raw emotion. Share it with anyone you think might appreciate a story that's a little real. And most importantly, leave a comment. Tell me what you would have done, or what you think I should have done. Your thoughts mean the world, especially when I'm wrestling with this stuff. Her name was Sarah. Even saying it now feels like a punch to the gut. A phantom ache that resurfaces without warning. We met in college, both of us bright-eyed and full of that naive certainty that comes with being young and thinking you have your whole life mapped out. She was studying art, vibrant and a little messy, with paint perpetually under her fingernails and a laugh that could fill a room. I was on the pre-med track, all logic and ambition, trying to convince myself that efficiency was the only thing that mattered. We were opposites, everyone said so. But it worked. It worked like nothing I'd ever experienced. She brought color into my black and white world. And I think I gave her a sense of stability, a steady hand in the beautiful chaos of her artistic spirit. We dated for 5 years, got married in a small ceremony in a park just outside of Denver, with the Rockies looming in the background. Our first apartment was a tiny place above a coffee shop downtown, the smell of roasted beans a constant companion. We'd spend our evenings there, her sketching in her worn leather-bound notebook, me buried in textbooks, the hum of the city a soundtrack to our quiet domesticity. She was my anchor, my confidant, the person I could tell anything to. And I thought, with every fiber of my being, that she felt the same way. The storybook. It was called The Whispering Willow, a tale she'd loved as a kid, passed down from her grandmother. She kept it on her bookshelf, nestled between a collection of Emily Dickinson poems and a dog-eared copy of The Great Gatsby. It was a faded blue Petterheart, the title embossed in gold that had long since lost its gleam. One rainy Tuesday, I was cleaning out a closet, trying to make some semblance of order in our lives, which at that point had moved to a comfortable suburban house with a decent-sized backyard and a mortgage that felt like a badge of adult responsibility. Sarah was out at her studio, working on a commission, and the house was quiet, except for the drumming of rain against the windows. I decided to tackle the spare room, a place that had become a graveyard for forgotten hobbies and impulse buys. Amongst the dusty boxes and out-of-season clothes, I found a shoebox labeled Sarah's Childhood Treasures. Curiosity, I admit, got the better of me. I opened it, sifting through faded drawings, a chipped porcelain doll, a handful of smooth gray stones. And then, at the bottom, I found it. Tucked beneath a tangle of old friendship bracelets was the Whispering Willow. It looked out of place, almost forgotten. I picked it up, the familiar weight of it comforting. I flipped through the pages, a wave of nostalgia washing over me, remembering Sarah reading it aloud to me once, her voice soft and whimsical. That's when I noticed it, a faint crease in the spine, near the middle of the book. It looked deliberate, like someone had folded it in a specific way, over and over. I ran my finger along it, and then I saw it. A small tear, almost invisible, on the inside of the back cover. I carefully peeled it back. Beneath it, tucked into a perfectly cut-out cavity in the thick cardboard, was a folded piece of brittle, yellowed paper. My heart did this weird fluttery thing. It felt like a scene from one of those movies we used to watch on Friday nights.
I unfolded the paper with trembling hands. It wasn't a letter or a diary entry. It was a map. Hand-drawn with shaky lines and faded ink. It depicted a series of landmarks, sketched crudely but recognizable if you knew the area. There was a church steeple, a distinctive oak tree, a winding creek, and a dotted line leading to an X marked with a small, almost apologetic flourish. The legend at the bottom was cryptic. Where the quiet whispers meet the flowing tears. I spent the rest of the afternoon and then most of the evening staring at that map. I tried to place the landmarks. The church steeple looked vaguely familiar, like one I'd seen on the edge of town. The oak tree, there were a lot of oak trees. But the creek, that was the key. I knew a creek that ran through the old state park, the one we used to hike in during our early dating years. It was a long shot, of course, a childish treasure hunt. Maybe it was something she'd done with her friends when she was a kid, a secret fort or a buried time capsule. I decided to tuck it back into the book, not wanting to pry further. But the image of the map, the intrigue of it, it lodged itself in my mind. A few days later, Sarah was out with her friends for one of their impromptu wine nights. I was home nursing a lukewarm cup of coffee, the rain still falling. I went back to the closet, pulled out the shoebox, and took out the map. This time, I was determined. I grabbed my keys, my phone, and that brittle piece of paper. I drove out towards the state park, the familiar roads feeling both comforting and strangely charged with anticipation. The rain had softened to a drizzle, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and pine. I parked the car near the trailhead and started walking, the map in my hand. I found the creek easily enough, its banks swollen from the rain, the water a muddy brown. I followed it, the map guiding me. I recognized the twisted shape of the old oak tree, silhouetted against the gray sky. And then, I saw it, a small stone foundation, half hidden by overgrown bushes. It was the remains of an old hunting cabin, I remembered now. We'd stumbled upon it on one of our hikes years ago. The X on the map was right there, near the foundation. My heart was pounding. This was it. I started to dig, using a small trowel I'd grabbed from the garage. The ground was soft and muddy. After a few minutes of digging, the trowel hit something solid. It wasn't a box, not like I'd imagined. It was a small, weathered wooden chest. It was old, the wood warped and stained, but intact. My hands were shaking as I pried it open. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, were a few items. A silver locket, tarnished with age. A small, intricately carved wooden bird. And a stack of letters, tied together with a faded silk ribbon. My initial excitement began to curdle into something else, something colder. The locket was unfamiliar. The bird, beautiful, but I'd never seen it before. And the letters, they weren't from her grandmother. The handwriting was different, elegant, looping script. I untied the ribbon, my fingers fumbling. The first letter was dated nearly 30 years ago.
It was addressed to Sarah, but the sender wasn't a parent, or an aunt, or a grandparent. It was signed simply, Daniel. I started to read, my breath catching in my throat. The letters weren't just friendly notes. They were filled with a deep, aching affection. Whispers of stolen moments, of a love that was forbidden, of a profound sadness that they couldn't be together. Daniel wrote about their secret meetings, about the woods, about the willow tree that stood by the creek, the whispering willow. He wrote about the locket, a gift of his love, and the bird, a symbol of their shared dreams. He described burying these treasures, a testament to their hidden passion, a map for a future that would never come. The dates on the letters spanned over a period of about a year. They ended abruptly. The last letter spoke of a painful separation, of a decision made out of necessity, a crushing goodbye. It was heartbreak, pure and simple, poured onto paper. I sat there, in the damp woods, the muddy chest open beside me, the rain starting to pick up again. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to click into place, but they weren't forming a picture I recognized. This wasn't just a childhood game. This was a secret, a profound, deeply buried secret from Sarah's past. Who was Daniel? Why had she kept this hidden? The idea that Sarah, my Sarah, the woman I thought I knew inside and out, had a love like this, a love so passionate it was buried in the woods and documented in clandestine letters, it felt like a betrayal of everything I believed about our relationship. I carefully put everything back into the chest, my hands moving with a new, heavy deliberation. I reburied it, the earth swallowing the evidence of this hidden past. I drove home in a daze, the rain now coming down in sheets, mirroring the turmoil inside me. I put the shoebox back in the closet, the storybook hidden once more, its secrets now exposed to me. I looked at Sarah when she got home, her cheeks flushed from the wine, her eyes bright. She kissed me, asked about my day, and I just smiled, a brittle, forced smile, and lied. I told her I'd had a quiet night in, but inside, a storm had already begun. The foundation of our life, the one I'd built with such certainty, felt like it was starting to crack, fissures appearing where I'd only ever seen solid ground. And I knew, with a terrifying certainty, that I couldn't unsee what I'd found. The map had led me to a place I never imagined, and the journey was far from over. The days that followed were a blur of forced normalcy. I'd watched Sarah, this woman I'd shared a life with, a bed with, a future with, and try to reconcile the image of her with the phantom of Daniel. Every laugh, every touch, every shared glance was now colored with a suspicion I couldn't shake. It was like watching a movie where you know the twist is coming, but you can't quite pinpoint the moment the character you thought you knew started to change. I became a forensic scientist of our marriage, dissecting every memory, every conversation, searching for clues, for inconsistencies, for anything that pointed to this hidden chapter. Had she ever mentioned a Daniel? I racked my brain, replaying years of dialogue, of shared stories. Nothing. It was a blank. And that blankness was more terrifying than any accusation. It spoke of a depth of secrecy I hadn't anticipated, a capability for compartmentalization that chilled me to the bone. Was she an actress? Was I just an audience member, oblivious to the performance unfolding before me? One evening, she was humming in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for dinner. It was a simple, domestic scene, the kind I'd always found so grounding. But today, the melody seemed to mock me, a cheerful tune against the backdrop of my internal chaos. I leaned against the doorframe, watching her. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, a few strands escaping to frame her face. She looked tired, but content. "Hey," I said, my voice rougher than I intended. She looked up, a smile softening her features. "Hey you, rough day?" I just shrugged, walking over to the counter. "Just thinking." She leaned in, her hand brushing my arm. "About what?" I hesitated, the question forming on my lips, a dangerous question that could shatter everything. Who was Daniel? Why did you bury him? Did you ever love me? Instead, I managed, "About that trip we took to the coast last summer. Remember that little diner with the incredible clam chowder?" It was a cheap deflection, a way to buy myself more time, to avoid the abyss. She laughed, a genuine, unforced sound. "Oh God, yes. I think I ate 3 bowls. You were so jealous because I got the last piece of their blueberry pie." The memory was real, a shared moment of joy. But now, even those memories felt tainted, like old photographs that had been subtly altered, a ghost lurking in the background. The tension in the house, for me, was palpable. I was walking on eggshells, constantly monitoring her reactions, searching for a flicker of guilt, a hint of deception. I'd find myself staring at her, mid-conversation, my mind miles away, replaying the letters, imagining the clandestine meetings. The image of her, young and in love with someone else, someone she'd kept hidden for decades,
was a constant gnawing presence. It was like finding a hidden room in your own house, a room you'd never known existed, and realizing that someone you lived with had been keeping it a secret. What else was hidden? What other rooms were there? The thought made me feel nauseous. I started sleeping poorly, my nights filled with fragmented dreams of hidden maps and faded ink. I'd wake up in a cold sweat, the phantom weight of the chest in my hands, the words of Daniel echoing in my ears. One Saturday, she announced she was going to visit her parents in Arizona for the weekend, a sudden trip, planned on a whim. My mind immediately went into overdrive. This was it, a chance to go back, to see if there was anything I'd missed, anything I'd overlooked. I told her I couldn't make it, that I had a project deadline at work, a flimsy excuse that she accepted without question. The moment her car pulled out of the driveway, I was back in that closet, pulling out the shoebox, my heart thrumming with a mixture of dread and a desperate need for answers. I took the storybook, The Whispering Willow, and drove out to the state park, the familiar route now imbued with a new, unsettling significance. The drizzle had returned, a fine mist that clung to the trees. I found the spot where I dug up the chest. The ground was still slightly disturbed, the grass beginning to grow back, but it was unmistakable. I knelt down, my fingers probing the earth. Was there anything else? Anything I'd missed in my haste and my shock? I dug around the original spot, then expanded my search, my movements growing more frantic with each passing minute. The mud clung to my hands, my clothes. I felt like a desperate archaeologist, unearthing not history, but a betrayal. And then my trowel hit something again. Not a box this time, something smaller, more metallic. I dug carefully around it, my breath catching in my chest. It was a small, tarnished silver tin, the kind that used to hold mints or a small amount of tobacco. It was heavy. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I pried it open with trembling fingers.
Inside, nestled amongst faded cotton balls, was another letter. And this one was different. It was written on plain white paper, the ink a stark black, and the handwriting, while still elegant, was more forceful, less lyrical than Daniel's. It was addressed to Sarah. The date was significantly later, just a few years before we'd even met. My blood ran cold. This wasn't an artifact from her childhood romance. This was something from her recent past. I unfolded it, my eyes scanning the words, my mind struggling to process what I was reading. My dearest Sarah, I know this is coming too late, and perhaps it's a foolish act to even send it, but I can't bear the thought of you never knowing. Not fully. He's a good man. I know he is. He seems to adore you. And you deserve adoration. You always have. But I see it, Sarah. The ghost of him. I see it in your eyes sometimes, when you think no one is looking. The lingering sadness, the unspoken words. It's why I couldn't tell you myself. Why I never reached out after that day. The shame, the guilt. It was too much. I was young, impulsive, and I made a choice that has haunted me every single day since. I chose fear over love. I chose practicality over passion. And in doing so, I lost you. He said you were talking about settling down, about finding that steady ground you always craved. And I understood. I did. But I also remembered our whispers under the willow, our dreams sketched in the dirt, the impossible promises we made. I remembered the feeling of your hand in mine, the way you looked at me like I was the only person in the world. That's a powerful thing, Sarah. A powerful thing to let go of. I never told you what happened that summer. I never told you why I had to leave, why I let my father's influence, his rigid expectations, dictate my life. He threatened to disown me, to cut off my education, everything I'd worked for. He saw you as a distraction, an artist with no prospects. He saw me as his heir, groomed for a life of corporate success. And I was weak. I let him break us. I told you it was best for both of us.
that we were too young, too different. Lies. All lies. The truth is, I was terrified. Terrified of disappointing him. Terrified of losing the future he'd laid out for me. A future that felt so safe, and yet so empty, without you. When I left, I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was securing my future, and by extension yours. I was wrong. I built a life that looks perfect on paper, but it's hollow. And the regret, it's a constant companion. I've tried to move on, to find love, but no one has ever come close to what we had. The locket I gave you, the bird, I carved it myself, remember? Each feather a prayer, each curve a silent plea for a future we never had. I watch you sometimes from afar. I see you happy, or at least you seem to be. And for a moment, I can almost believe it. But then I see that flicker, that shadow in your eyes, and I know you're still carrying a piece of me with you, just as I carry you with me. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect anything. I just needed you to know. The map, the chest, the letters. I put them there knowing you'd eventually find them. It was my way of confessing, of leaving a record of our love, of the mistake I made. I hoped, one day, you'd understand. And maybe, just maybe, you'd find peace. I'm sorry, Sarah, for everything. Yours always, Daniel. I reread the letter, my hands now clenched into fists. The air in the woods felt thick, suffocating. Daniel, he wasn't just a ghost from her past. He was a specter that had followed her into her present. The letters I'd found were from when she was a teenager. A passionate, forbidden love. This letter, however, was from years later, years into our marriage. He had seen me. He had watched us. He had known about our life, our home, our happiness. And he had written this confession, this plea. A cold, hard knot of fury tightened in my stomach. It wasn't just Sarah's secret anymore. It was Daniel's too. He had chosen to revisit the past, to inject his regret and his confession into her present. He had left her a breadcrumb trail of guilt and longing, and she in turn had kept it hidden from me. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just about a teenage crush. This was about a lingering connection, a wound that had never truly healed. The fact that he had watched us, that he had seen me with her, and still sent her this letter. It was a profound violation. My mind raced, piecing together the timeline. The letters in the chest were from her late teens, early 20s. This tin, however, was from much later. This meant Daniel had reached out to Sarah after we were married. He had actively sought her out, revisited their past, and confessed his regrets. And Sarah had received this, kept it, and said nothing. She had read these words, felt the sting of his regret, the echo of their lost love, and then she had put it away, buried it alongside their teenage treasures, and continued our life, as if it meant nothing. But it clearly had meant something. Otherwise, why the fear? Why the continued secrecy? Why the carefully constructed lie? I felt a surge of hot rage, a primal urge to scream, to smash something. All this time, I thought I was fighting a ghost from adolescence. But it was more than that. It was a man who had re-entered her life. A man who still carried a torch for her. A man who had written her a letter confessing his deepest regrets and acknowledging the lingering connection. And she had chosen to keep it, to hide it, to pretend it never happened. What was she hiding it from? Me. I stood up, my legs feeling unsteady. The woods, which had once felt like a place of innocent discovery, now felt tainted by secrets and betrayals that stretched across years. I looked down at the tin, the letter a stark white against the muddy earth. This wasn't just about Sarah's past love. It was about her present choices, her decision to conceal this from me. The implications of her silence gnawed at me. What was she afraid of? Was she afraid of losing me? Or was she afraid of losing the possibility of something she'd lost with Daniel? The confusion was a swirling vortex pulling me under. I drove home, the letter burning a hole in my pocket. The words seared into my brain. The house felt different now. Colder. More alien. I could feel the weight of Sarah's unspoken confession. Her hidden fear. Pressing down on me. I knew I couldn't let this go. I couldn't pretend I hadn't found this. This was a turning point. A chasm that had opened up between us. And I had to confront it. I had to know why. Why had she kept this? Why had she let this man's words into her life? And then deliberately hidden them from me? The quiet hum of her refrigerator. The ticking of the clock on the wall. All of it felt like a prelude to an unavoidable storm. I sat on the edge of the sofa, the letter still in my hand, my heart bounding a frantic, desperate rhythm against my ribs. She would be home soon, and I knew with a chilling certainty that the carefully constructed normalcy of our lives was about to shatter. I looked at the front door, my gaze fixed, waiting. The silence in the house was deafening, pregnant with the secrets that were about to be exposed. The click of the lock in the front door was like a gunshot in the silence. Sarah.
She walked in, juggling grocery bags, humming that same tune from earlier in the week. She looked tired, the kind of tired that comes from a long drive and the forced cheerfulness of visiting family. "Hey honey, I'm back. You won't believe the traffic coming through the city. Almost took me an extra hour." Her voice was light, breezy, completely unaware of the bomb that had just detonated in my living room. I didn't stand up. I just sat there, on the edge of the sofa, the silver tin and the letter still in my hand. I watched her unpack, her movements fluid, familiar. The way she always puts the milk on the top shelf, the way she tucks the bread into the side of the fridge. Every small, ordinary action now felt like a deliberate act of deception, a performance designed to maintain the illusion of our normal, happy life. She finally turned, a smile on her face, and stopped dead. Her eyes landed on the tin, then the letter. The smile faltered, then vanished. A shade of white drained from her face, leaving it stark and drawn. The grocery bag slipped from her grasp, a carton of eggs splattering on the floor. The sound was hollow, insignificant against the sudden, crushing silence that descended. What is that?" she whispered, her voice a thin thread. Her eyes darted from the letter to my face, wide with a terror I'd never seen before. I held up the letter, my hand trembling. "It's Daniel's letter, Sarah. The one you kept. The one he wrote you years after we were married." My voice was flat, devoid of emotion, a dangerous calm before the storm. She didn't move. She just stood there, frozen, her gaze locked on the paper, as if it were a venomous snake. The groceries lay scattered around her, forgotten. The scent of spilled milk and crushed eggs filled the air, a grotesque parody of domesticity. Where did you find it?" Her voice was barely audible, a confession in itself. "The woods, Sarah. Where you put it. Where you buried our past and then buried my ignorance with it." I finally pushed myself up, the movement slow, deliberate. Each step towards her felt like wading through thick mud. I could see the guilt churning in her eyes,
the desperate scramble for an answer, for a way out. It's not what you think," she stammered, her hands coming up defensively, as if to ward off an unseen blow. "It's old. It's from a long time ago." "Old?" "This letter is dated 7 years ago, Sarah. 7 years into our marriage. You think that's old?" My voice rose, a tremor finally creeping in, the anger starting to crack through the icy calm. "He watched us, Sarah. He saw us. He saw me with you. And he sent you this confession. And you took it. You read it. And you hid it." Tears welled in her eyes, but they weren't tears of sorrow. Not yet. They were tears of fear, of a cornered animal. "I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't want to ruin what we had. Ruin what we had. You think this doesn't ruin what we had?" I was shouting now, the dam finally breaking. The carefully constructed facade of the last few weeks, of the last few years, was crumbling around us. I've spent weeks, Sarah, weeks, tearing myself apart, thinking I was going insane, trying to understand what was happening. And all along, you had this. You had his words, his regret, his lingering, whatever it was, and you chose to keep it from me. You chose to lie. She sank onto the edge of the overturned carton of eggs, her body shaking. "He was my first love, David. You know that. That whole box, it was a memory of a different time. That letter, it was from him. Years later, he was married too. He saw me at the grocery store, running into me by chance. He said he regretted everything, that he'd made a mistake, that he'd never stopped thinking about me. He sent me that letter, and I panicked. I didn't know what to do. I was married to you. I loved you. I didn't want that past to intrude, so I put it away. I buried it, just like I buried the rest of it. Buried it." I laughed, a harsh, broken sound. "You buried it in a tin, in a woods, a testament to a love you never fully let go of. And then you let me find it. You let me dig it up. Was that your plan, Sarah? To slowly, torturously, reveal your secret? No. David, please. I love you. You're my life. That was a mistake. A stupid, cowardly mistake. He was a part of my past. A painful, beautiful part. Yes, but still the past. You are my present, my future." Her voice cracked, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. When I found out he'd written that, it brought it all back. The regret, the what ifs. And I was so scared. Scared of what it would do to us. To you. I didn't want to lose you. But you did lose me, Sarah, I said, my voice dropping to a hoarse whisper. The anger was receding, replaced by a profound, bone-deep weariness. You think I can look at you now, knowing that for years, this man was a part of our life, a shadow that you kept hidden in the dark, that he could watch us, and you could still hold on to his words, his regrets. I walked over to the window, looking out at the familiar suburban street. It looked the same, but it wasn't. It was irrevocably changed. He saw you with me, Sarah. He saw you happy, or what he thought was happy, and he still sent you that letter. He still reached out, and you didn't tell me. You didn't trust me enough to tell me. It wasn't about trust, David. It was about shame and fear. He was my first love. He was the one who got away, the one I dreamed about when things were tough. And then he reappeared, a ghost from my past, confessing his regrets. And I didn't want that ghost to haunt our life. I thought if I just buried it deep enough, it would stay buried. But it didn't, did it? Because it was never really buried. It was just misplaced. And now I found it. And it's not just his regret anymore, Sarah. It's yours. Your regret for keeping it from me. Your regret for what? I turned back to her, my eyes searching hers, desperate for an understanding that was slipping further and further away, for still loving him, for still carrying a piece of him. She sobbed, a raw, ragged sound. No, not that. Never that. It's the regret of knowing I hurt you, of knowing I've broken something precious. I chose him once, David. I chose his future over our love.
because I was scared. And then when he came back years later, I was scared again. Scared of losing you. Scared of opening up that old wound. And I made the wrong choice, David. I always seem to make the wrong choice when it comes to him. The confession hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. The words were out. The truth laid bare, but it offered no comfort, no absolution. It only confirmed the chasm that had opened between us. A chasm carved by years of unspoken truths and hidden fears. He wrote about the locket, you know, I said, my voice barely a whisper. The bird you wear, he carved it. Said each feather was a prayer for a future they never had. Her hand flew to her neck, her fingers tracing the outline of the delicate silver bird. Her eyes widened, a fresh wave of tears washing over her. I didn't know he told you that. He just gave it to me, and I kept wearing it. I thought it was just a beautiful piece of jewelry. Did you? Or did you wear it as a reminder?
A reminder of the love you lost? Of the man who could have been? The accusation, raw and brutal, hung between us. She shook her head vehemently, tears streaming down her face. No, David, that's not it at all. I wore it because it's beautiful, and because maybe a small part of me never forgot him. But that doesn't mean I ever stopped loving you, or that I ever wanted him. He was a part of my past, a significant, painful part, but still the past. You are my life. But you hid the past, Sarah. You didn't let me in. You kept this enormous secret, this man who had been in your life, who had reappeared and confessed his regrets, who had seen us together, and you didn't tell me. Why? Why were you so afraid of me? I wasn't afraid of you, David. I was afraid of losing you. I thought if you knew, if you saw him again, if you read those words, you'd see me differently. You'd think I was still torn, still longing for him. And I wasn't. I haven't been, not for years. But that letter, it brought back a lot. The fear of him reappearing, the fear of you finding out and leaving me. It was a terrible, stupid cycle of fear. I looked at her, really looked at her, the woman I thought I knew inside and out. Her face was a mask of anguish, her body racked with sobs. She was broken, and in a way, so was I. The perfect picture of our life, meticulously painted over the years, was now smeared and ruined. So, what happens now, Sarah? The question was a whisper, laced with a weariness that felt ancient. What do we do with this? With him? With this mess? She raised her head, her eyes red-rimmed but clear now, a desperate sincerity in them. I don't know, David. I honestly don't know. But I will never lie to you again. I will tell you everything, if you want me to. If you want to try and fix this. I turned back to the window. The sun was starting to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. It was a beautiful, serene scene, a stark contrast to the turmoil raging inside me. The decision I had to make was not about forgiving Daniel, or even about Sarah's past. It was about whether I could rebuild something on foundations that had been revealed as fragile, as riddled with hidden cracks. He's still out there, Sarah, I said, my voice flat. He saw you. He wrote you. He's a part of your story, whether you like it or not. And now he's a part of mine. And I don't know if I can ever look at you, at us, without seeing the shadow of him, without wondering what else is hidden. I felt a profound emptiness settle in my chest, a hollow ache that no amount of words could fill. The love was still there, a faint ember glowing in the ashes of betrayal, but it was fragile, threatened by the icy wind of doubt. I'm so sorry, David, she whispered, her voice raw with pain. I truly am. I never wanted this. I turned back to face her, my gaze sweeping over her tear-streaked face, the scattered groceries, the silver tin on the floor. The cinematic moment, the dramatic climax, had arrived, and it was devastatingly, brutally real. There were no neat resolutions, no grand pronouncements of love that could magically erase the years of deception. There was only the raw, exposed truth, and the agonizing question of what came next. I know, I said, the words catching in my throat.
I know you didn't. But here we are. I let out a long, slow breath, the air heavy with unspoken grief and uncertainty. The silence that followed was immense, a vast echoing space where our past, our present, and our future hung precariously in the balance. It was the quiet after the storm, but the wreckage was still visible, stark and undeniable, and I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that nothing would ever be the same. I just stood there, letting the weight of it all settle, the last vestiges of denial finally dissolving. The tears were still on her face, but the terror had morphed into a deep, profound sadness. And in that moment, looking at her, I felt a loneliness so vast. It felt like the whole world had shrunk to just the two of us, standing on the precipice of an unknown future, the echoes of a love lost and a trust broken, reverberating between us like a haunting melody.